Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. Welcome on behalf of NHRD and Mind Matters. For those of you who are new to the entire campaign, let me just introduce Mind Matters to you. We started this campaign NHRD started this campaign about a year ago, last October, because I mean, mental health challenges have always been there, but it's kind of been spotlighted by the pandemic, right? So we thought it would be a good time for the National HRD Network to bring this as a campaign to corporate India really, and get us starting, get us talking about it, just to normalize, conversations around mental health, and to bring a little more information and knowledge to all of us really. Okay. So we had this campaign a year ago. We had a second iteration of it in April, May, and June this year. And I think many of you would have, been with us through those sessions. And I'm really happy to welcome you back to this third iteration of Mind Matters. We launched it last Tuesday with a games evening. I'll just take you through through what's in store for us the rest of the month. We had the games night, which some of you would have attended, and we gave away some prizes at the games night as well by Thought Company. We had a tweet quiz on Saturday, and today, of course, is the Anxiety Decode. We have a conversation with Harish Iyer and myself, around the queer experience on the 26th. And we have a roundtable on the 29th with experts around the pandemic effects. And Rajiv Bajaj is closing it on the 30th of October with a conversation on mental well-being. Now, we also have a Mind Matters Ambassador Workshop, and the registration for that is by CXO nomination only. So if your organizations are interested in this, please do write into the Mind Matters email ID, which is mindmatters@nationalhrd.org. And we will invite you to those workshops, because those are only by CXO nomination. Right. We also have a contest. So in our attempt to encourage people to start talking about mental health, we're saying share your story, how you dealt with it, put it as a LinkedIn post, tag us at NHRD in Mind Matters, accept to reset, which is our tagline for this campaign, and tag anybody who might have supported you through that phase. We do have, it's a contest, so we do have a prize. Thought Company has very kindly given us a voucher to give away for this. Please do put it on LinkedIn and tag NHRD and Mind Matters, and we will consider you an applicant for
Has Devika dropped off?
Yeah, I think so. Geeta, you want to pick it from here?
Yeah. So, so today's session, we are going to be. I think we've taken you through the what we are going to be looking at in 3.0, and let me introduce today's session. Today's session is all about anxiety, and we're going to be looking at the physiology, the anatomy, as well as certain coping mechanisms on how we can understand anxiety. And the whole idea is, one, to decode as well as to embrace it, because we are also going to talk about why it is an important aspect for us to be able to function and become efficient, productive, and fulfilling in all our activities. So let me start by introducing our facilitator today, that is Soonu. Soonu Wadewala is an HR and L&D professional, I think, and she is by passion a very, very, let's say she's very passionate about the area of well-being, and she's a yoga proponent and a follower of Kriya Yoga, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you and welcome, Soonu. Devika and me are her co-facilitators. We'll be coming in and out, but I think Soonu is going to be taking us through a very exciting 1 hour. So stay with us. There are a lot of things, exercises, and interesting insights that Soonu is going to take us through. Devika, who's joining us as a co-facilitator, is a mental health professional. She is trained and certified by the Mental Health Association, the India chapter. And she's again extremely passionate about this. In fact, she's one of the, let's say, the founder members of this whole Mind Matters, which was spearheaded last year. And I'm Geeta Kumar, and I'm again another well-being champion, a DNI professional, and I think this is something that is very, very close, not just because of the pandemic, and I think it's a very, very important, crucial element which we feel, as all of us in NHRDN feel, that it needs to be very, very strongly advocated and integrated. So over to you, Devika, if you'd like to add something more. Otherwise, the floor is to Soonu. Unmute yourself.
Thank
Devika.
you so much, Geeta and Devika for Devika.
Devika, you'll have to unmute yourself. Are you not able to? Can't unmute. Okay. So, all right. So, Soonu, would you like to take over now? Let's start, and let's not waste too much time.
I was just, I was in that not host mode. Thank you. Thank you for taking over, Geeta. And I'm sorry, everybody, for my internet unreliability. So, anxiety decode, right? There was like everything happening out here for me. So, no, this is like a perfect candidate for you today to work on. So, I don't know if I missed the introductions. We introduced Soonu already, Geeta. Okay, great. Lovely. So then let's just jump in. Let's not waste people's time. Soonu, over to you. And thank you for agreeing to do this workshop today. I think it's clearly the need of the hour for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Devika. Yes, truly dealing with our digital anxieties today, and hoping the connection remains strong and we work it out. If we could please allow us to share the screen. Thank you. So yes, good evening, everybody. A very, very warm welcome to everyone until we have our screen being put up. The workshop is literally about decoding anxiety and accept to reset our anxieties. Today, we are going to speak about a word that is misused in these current circumstances. So what we are going to focus on is being aware, accepting and reframing our anxieties with coping mechanisms. Now, this is a very subjective topic, so I'm sure everybody will have their own stories and own responses to anxieties. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and hence it will be important to put ourselves into whatever we are going to discover and unveil today. So let us spend the next 90 minutes as an interactive session and learn from each other, because today's topic, as I said, will have your own flavors. I hope the connection remains strong, and let it be a two-way conversation. I would be inviting your responses on the Mentimeter. All you need to do is type the code link provided and submit your responses. It will be a good visual treat for us to, have the data pulled up in front of us. So please do participate in all the question answer sessions, and it will be really good to hear you. Well, anxiety is trending, isn't it? And so does it reflect on our surveys and assessments that are happening worldwide. The disruption to routines, education, recreation, as well as concern for family health, incomes, it's leaving many people afraid, anxious, angry, and concerned for their future. According to ADP survey, we have 70%, that's every 7 in 10 Indian workers said that they were experiencing stress at least once a week on a regular basis. However, the survey, we have a little good news as well, although we are hearing a lot of anxiety and anxious problems everywhere. But the good news is that the survey found that Indians were amongst the most likely to discuss mental health problems at work. 90% of respondents said they would be comfortable talking to someone at work about their mental health. So it's a very welcoming news for us as organizations to identify, accept, and devise strategies around mental well-being. Express and not suppress is the first step to resolve mental health challenges. Now, let's jump into the word itself, the word anxiety. If Nikita, I may request you to have up the link of Mentimeter and the code, please. What we are going to do is, before we start off of what is anxiety or what are the definitions, let's each one put in our own thoughts, our own first few words that come to our mind when we hear anxiety. So I would request everyone to please log in, type the code, and share your responses. Okay, so we do have a chat box, but it would be great if you could go on Mentimeter and log in there and type in the words there. So we'll get a word bubble with all our words. The code is up there on the screen. Okay, Nikita, if you could share the link, please.
Yeah, I've done that. It's there on the
Yes.
screen as well. Yeah, menti.com, and the code is up there. Yeah.
Up there. Thank you so much. So yes, the link is menti.com. Okay, great. We have responses flowing in. Fear, worry, uncertainty, panic, failure, stress, breathlessness, unproductive, uncertainty, tension, frustrations, ambiguity. Fear is coming up strong, stress, panic, worry, failure, right? Overwhelmed, lonely, loss of sleep, sense of paralysis. Great. Overthinking. Fall back. Confusions. Great. I think we have a lot of words, a lot of emotions being shared here. And very true. I think collectively we have all defined anxiety and understood what are the various symptoms. So the next few slides will be easier for us to absorb. It's collectively, all of us, I think most of these words would even pop up to my mind when I first hear the word anxiety. And collectively, I think we've really curated our own little meaning of the word anxiety. Now, thank you. So now when that we've heard about what anxiety is all about, let me get into, I've come across various definitions, and one simplified version of the definition of anxiety is it's a feeling of worry, fear, nervousness, or unease about something that you already said, right? We saw fear gaining so many bold letters. That means that so many of you really meant that it was fear, it was worry, and all the other words that you really shared were something which was nothing more but a feeling of worry, fear, nervousness, or unease about something. Now, when we try to understand further the symptoms, how do we really understand the symptoms? Now, physical symptoms is something where, you have palpitations, your heart beats faster. We heard somebody saying sleeplessness. We saw somebody saying confusion. So these are all symptoms which happens at different levels. physically you have a symptom, it then plays in your cognition by not being able to decide, losing judgment, losing focus, losing concentration. Emotionally, you become edgy. There is irritability, anger, feeling of being on the edge. And behaviorally, what do? We either avoid situations or we try to fight back, have some obsessive compulsive disorders, could lead to drinking, smoking, substance abuse. So this is how it manifests at different levels. That's what we meant by introducing symptoms for anxiety. Now, if we go further, what happens is for today, while we've understood the anxieties, there are times when this anxiety remains persistent over longer number of days, which impacts your everyday living or your everyday life. Now, that rules into anxiety disorders, and we will be not really going further into that zone, but we are going to talk about everyday anxieties that we deal with. Yeah. Now, again, anxiety is a natural response. Anxiety is a natural reaction. It's an emotion. Now, what do we mean by emotion or feeling, and how does it really play out? Something as simple as our body, our mind reacts with fight, flight, or freeze zone. I call it the F3, which is more simpler to understand. As you see these little creatures here, which show that if there is a stimulus that comes to them, how are they going to respond or how are they going to react? Now, let's assume we are all sitting in the stadium. Dhoni hits a six right in front of us. The season ball is coming right on our face. We want to fight it out. We want to use our hands to protect ourselves or either try to grab it. We are in the fight mode. We want to duck it out because maybe it's not something that we want to hold. So we want to escape. We are at the flight mode. And God save you if you freeze, because it can just slam upon your face, but hopefully somebody else can catch it for you. So this is in a very simpler version, that when there's a perceived threat, how do we react as human beings? And these are our responses that have been for millions of years, because that is how our survival instincts had activated, right? Either you fight the animal, you fly away from it, or you are frozen. So these are the three activations that we could say happen to us when we come up or when there is a perceived threat for us, right? Before we go further into it, what we could do is again get onto our Mentimeter. There will be certain situations that will pop up, and I would like to understand from you, what would you do? Would you fight it out? Would there be a flight response, or would you freeze? There's no right or wrong answer. As I said, everybody has subjective experiences to anxiety. So please feel free to mention from these three states that what is it that you would like to do. So if we could go on and project the questions, please. Right. So first one is, okay, great. I've already started getting responses. Encountering a growling dog while walking. See how different each one of us is, right? There are multiple states and multiple responses, right? So we have many of us wanting to fight it out. Okay, now fight and freeze is almost equal. Flight and freeze is equal. Nice. If we go to the next one, please. A fast car approaching while you are crossing the road. So please visualize yourself as if it's happening in real for you, and what would you do? Flight and freeze. Yes, unless we are in a movie, we can't really fight it off. Okay. Great. So we have maximum votes to flight, to really quickly cross the road. Next one. Getting spooked or frightened by someone jumping out of a room suddenly. Freeze. Bound to be. It would be for me too. Good daredevils we have who want to fight it out. Some want to fly away. Great. Next, please. Feeling unsafe while walking down a dark street or a dark lane. Want to run away, reach home quickly? Yeah, flight, fight. Great. Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And now that we have understood that these were real situations, right? Real threats. And obviously, this is how you had to react. Either you had to fight it off, you had to flight, or you were frozen. So these are your natural instincts. These are your natural responses. Now, the question to ask is, if the F3 system is critical to our survival from true threat or danger, but what happens when there is no real danger? Interestingly, anxiety can also trigger this system into action when we believe there is threat or danger, even if there is not. Now, what am I trying to say? For example, you may yell at your partner for pushing you or nudging you into agreeing to speak at a conference when you don't really feel like you're ready to fight. Or you avoid going to a party or leave early because you don't feel comfortable around unfamiliar people. Or your mind goes blank when your boss asks you a question, you're frozen. Now, all of these are examples that can cause anxiety, which in turn can mistakenly trigger the F3 alarm. Now, public speaking, parties, and answering questions are not dangerous situations. But if your alarm system is set to high alert, it will go off even in relatively harmless situations. Now, this is the part where we want to deal with. Because you would say, Soonu, you just said that it's a natural reaction, F3. So why are we really wanting to learn more about it? So what happens to our actions, behaviors when we perceive threat, which is not really a threat? You may end up in the fight mode. What happens? You're picking up fights with people, being edgy, defensive, easily getting offended, hoarding items, right? We saw this survival instincts during the pandemic. What happened? We wanted to hoard, many Western countries were hoarding toilet papers, and there was a shortage of toilet papers. So much so that the people really fought for it. Flight. You want to escape. Gaming, increasing time spent in television, people pleasing, or hiding out, or you have complete reluctance to engage. Freeze, numbing behaviors such as substance abuse, drop in certain energy levels, having just a plastic smile because you really don't know what to respond to. Stress induced illness and disordered eating. Now, I wanted to spend time here because this is what is everyday anxiety. This is what it may end up in if we don't have it checked, if we don't know what our triggers are. So, this could be our fight, flight, freeze reactions when actually it's not even a perceived threatful situation, right? A boss asking a question is not threatful, but it could happen over a time that you either want to avoid your boss, either you get frozen, or maybe you become edgy with your boss. So these are situations which we need to really reflect upon as we are going through our workshop and understand how do we may want to really tweak our responses and firstly respond and not react. So moving forward, right now, what I would want you to do if you have a piece of paper with you, or it's just more about tuning in, just reflect. Pick a situation that is not a threatful one. Like, it's not that really for survival you need to take an action. It's not the threatful one, but you see yourself operating from either of these F3 states. It's just for you to reflect and identify with yourself. Don't worry, I'm not really going to ask you to disclose if you feel like you may. But this is more about your own reflections so that there is a take back for you. That are there any situations which are not really threatful for survival, but I may still be acting from these three states? And maybe catch on and hold on to that situation, which will enable us to really walk further with it. Now, while you're reflecting, and if you've taken a moment to really identify that situation, it's also important to understand what's happening inside us. Now, I'm not going to take a session on human anatomy, but this is more about understanding really what's happening inside. Why do we have these symptoms? Why do we react the way we are reacting? So it's basically, to put it in simple words, what happens when there is a stressful situation? Your sympathetic nervous system gets activated. What do I mean by that? Just basically pupils expanding, fast and shallow breaths. Now, this is a very vicious circle. You have fast and shallow breaths, which induces fear. Fear further induces fast and shallow breaths. So it's a vicious cycle. That's how it's going to keep reaping on. Heart pumps faster. Gut is inactive. Digestive issues. So these are basic things that are happening inside our nervous system, and it's important to know that why it's happening, because there is an activation. It also activates stress hormones, cortisol, adrenal. These are stress hormones that get activated when our sympathetic nervous system is activated. This was for you to understand that how really what's happening inside of us, inside of our body, right? So, as I said, hormones are released, and they get released very quick. And the quantum of the stress hormones released really takes charge of your body. Now, while I have shared all of this, it's important for me to also have a little self-disclosure to share my anxieties. Do I get anxious? Of course I do. Have I struggled with anxiety? Yes, I have done. Now, what happened is, I was always an avid public speaker. I never related to anyone who would say that they are having difficulty in speaking publicly. And during one of my leadership transition roles, I had to conduct town halls and speak more often. A few years back, I noticed in few last town halls that I had to do, my voice box would give up on me, and my breathing was way too faster. I thought it's my tonsils, and I let it be, until a time when I actually cut short my speech because I was unable to speak. I froze. So my instant reaction to an external threat was to freeze. And then it happened so that I started avoiding any public speaking sessions. Why? Because I got anxious much even before the session could arrive. So what did I do? I was operating from the zone of being frozen. It was not a perceived threat. It was not a survival instinct, but I related to every town hall as if I need to survive, and hence I need to either take a flight or freeze. I then dug deeper and tried to understand that what's really happening. I tried to relive all the previous town halls that I was conducting and what really triggered. To which I found that there was one town hall where I felt I have done excellently well, but just few feedbacks that I received were critical. And I internalized it so much that I made this situation a situation of threat, a situation which needed my survival instincts to respond to. I'll leave you with this and share my coping mechanisms when we come to that. And at this point, I would like to invite Devika and Geeta to share their journeys, their stories, and their ways of managing anxieties, and what sort of anxieties triggered you, and what was happening, what was going on when you were dealing with anxiety. So Devika, may I please request you to share?
Thanks, Soonu. Actually, a couple of things. One very specific incident I can share with you, which happened recently, other than my internet going off just now, of course. That was like really bad. My daughter was unwell recently, and she doesn't live here. She lives in another country. There was nothing I could do physically to help her, and as a parent, you want to be there, you want to check temperature, you want to, provide medication and all of that. So that feeling of helplessness that I had sort of took over everything, and I found myself snapping at people, not having patience with other people who were with me at that point in time. I found myself waking up at 2 a.m, wondering whether she's okay. Should I call her? Should I, so a lot of worry around that, and all kinds of thoughts of, how bad it could be, how ill really is she, and things like that. And so I think a lot of it was because it was not in my control. And that gave rise to many of these things going on in my in my head, in my body, and in the way I behaved even. You know, there was like this tight feeling in my stomach. So until I knew she was little better, it didn't release, and I realized only after that that tight feeling was because I was worried about her, right? So that was one. And the other is just in this entire period of the last couple of years, right? Just this feeling of dread all the time. There's the feeling of unease and dread, and not knowing what's going to happen next, not being able to plan ahead, right? So these feelings of just feelings of loss of control over things, you know. And just now, when the internet went off, it's quite cool here. I'm sitting in Mysore. It's quite cool in the evening, but I just broke out of this in a sweat. My hands were clammy. I didn't know what to do. It was like complete panic stations for me. Yeah, so that's a little bit about how I've been feeling of late.
Thanks, Devika, for sharing candidly. So I'm hearing loss of, confidence. There is a lot uncertainty that was revolving, and of course, anxiety to make sure that your daughter is doing fine. And right now, as you just explained, the physical symptoms that came up when you had a digital encounter. So thanks, Devika, for sharing. And Geeta, may I request you to please share your journey with anxieties?
Oh, yes, it's an ever-going journey, really, Soonu. And I'll start with just what happened, when the Devika dropped out and Soonu, you were not. So it was like a punch, hey, what's happening? And I said, okay, now what do I do? The first thing of, that freeze. And then I don't know where I took off and I just rambled and I just hope it all worked out. I'm still feeling, I'm not very sure. So that was the first real live thing that happened right here for all of us, in the moment. Having said that, I definitely I'm in resonance to what Devika said. In this recent times, it's something like an unidentified anxiety. It's something which one can't put your finger exactly as to what it is, but it's just there somewhere. So the whole thing is, first was that you were locked into the house, and now when you're about, time things have moved out. There is an anxiety even for that. How am I going to navigate? I mean, comfortable. There has been a routine, and then so there is, and it's not actually unexplainable. It's not as so you said, you couldn't point out to something very specific, but it is there. Now, having said that, I'm going to share a real anxiety which I have, and I'm going to really take a deep breath when I say that I have a huge anxiety around doing learning anything new on technology, whether it is on the phone, laptop, or even on the TV. It may seem very trivial to a lot of them, but it's very, very real for me, And the first impact is a complete blank in fear. Suppose something suddenly out of the blue or something new comes up, my mind and body just locks up. It's a full freeze, as Soonu had explained to us previously. And I can experience that sudden knot in my stomach. My breath is shallow. And I want to wish that task to just go away somehow, just magically, disappear. And the first feeling, my emotion is basically that I can't do this, and I'm going to make a mess of it. I'll be a laughing stock. What will people think? That I don't even know this much, so that's what, and I'm literally all over the state. And in my mind, it's actually just panic. I can feel it just like, and I'm just thinking, who can I outsource it to? Who can help me in this? Just like hoping it's just going to, someone's just going to like somebody who's going to rescue me from this. And funnily, everyone whom I mentioned this anxiety, they keep telling me, it's such an intuitive process. If I just start playing with technology, dabble with features, so all that I get, cognitively, but this is my first instinctive reaction, what I've just shared. And in fact, in that stage, nothing strikes me as possible and doable that I can, do. And there's this whole sense of being completely out of control. So not until I take a deep breath and just try and, not let my thoughts run amok. So that's what this whole thing is all about for me.
That's very, very candid, Geeta. Thanks for sharing. And let me assure you first that when Devika and me vanished, you really handled it well for us. So thank you for doing that and saving the evening when we were facing our digital anxieties. So that's
Don't worry, we were
really
all together in this. And the whole session is together with this. So,
of
so
course,
thanks,
of course.
thanks.
Yeah, and yes, I heard you also speaking about fear of losing control or maybe fear of being judged. If you're not able to really navigate well with technology. So maybe when we come to our coping mechanisms, let's see how we can really integrate them, accept them, and reset our anxieties. Thanks, Devika and Geeta, both for really sharing it candidly, and I hope our participants feel that it's a collective I would say struggle or embrace that we need to do with anxiety. It's not something that happens to one alone in the corner. And speaking it out, sharing it out does not make us vulnerable. It makes us more stronger because we are very courageous. You are very courageous to share it. So please do keep sharing and keep in tune with what we have to now go ahead with our next segment. Thank you, Geeta and Devika. So we heard them out. We heard the experiences. We heard all our journeys on the anxiety front. Now I would like to hear from you. What causes you stress? What are the factors that causes you stress? And if we have to narrow it down from our participants, what stresses you most at workplace? This is something I would like to hear from you. Maybe if you could describe it in a word, 2 words, 3 words maybe, and try and understand that what are your stressors at workplace? Not meeting your targets, lack of control, parallel deadlines, follow-ups, conflict, difficult conversations, change, unexpected work, not meeting your targets, being judged, lack of control, escalations, burden, unresponsive customers, meetings, people aggression, okay, cluttered work, communication, manager not trusting me, frequent follow-ups, fear of failure, short deadlines, unethical behavior, explaining the work I did, lack of clarity, judgment. Thanks for candidly sharing, participants. I think very important to know what really stresses us, and I think very rightly you've identified what are the triggers. It could be deadlines, it could be lack of control, meetings. I hear lack of trust from the manager, not being respected, not being ethical. So it's important that once we understand what are the stresses that are happening or triggers that are happening around us, and we when we are managing work ourselves, are we really the cause of this stress to somebody else? So that's again a point to ponder, that if you are hearing these thoughts collectively, that these are the triggers that can cause stress, have you been a trigger to cause the same sort of stress to people around you? So that's a point to ponder upon, that if you are doing any of this, maybe does it really cause stress? And it's, again, there's nothing wrong or right, it's just a point to ponder. Now if we move on to the next slide, There's a beautiful study done over workplace triggers that cause anxiety and what are the outcomes. Let me share some interesting facts with you. From the study, we observed that majority of surveyed employees, 60% of them said that anxiety affects their job performance. And half of them reported a negative impact on relationships with coworkers and peers. Now, one of the most important trigger for anxiety at workplace found by this study was public speaking. One of the worst outcome of this was missing deadlines. Now, 55% of employees surveyed said they experience anxiety about deadlines, which may even contribute to missing them altogether. So, you're so anxious about meeting deadlines, that's your trigger, and the impact is you're actually missing deadlines. Of course, there could be multiple impacts and outcomes, but this is how it very defeats the very purpose of what the trigger is. So, this is what certain higher levels of anxiety can impact or create an outcome with. Now, again, the study revealed that one of the biggest drivers of work performance is interpersonal relationships. Unfortunately, those experiencing anxiety are more likely to avoid their coworkers, hoping to avoid interpersonal conflicts. Since work is a more of a collaborative environment, it's very astonishing to witness how workplace anxiety may affect the performance of an entire operation. This means that workplace anxiety is more than just a matter of employee health or employee well-being or overall well-being. It has a direct impact on a company's bottom line. That's the direct impact we are talking about when we speak about workplace anxiety. So this was again a moment of reflections. We can call it our MORs. I believe you've taken time to reflect and understand your triggers earlier when we spoke about fight, flight, and freeze. I would also request you to have a moment of reflection now and understand your own trigger and the impact it has caused. I heard most of you speaking, you're sharing about your workplace stresses, which included lack of clarity, disrespect, no trust from managers, unethical behavior. So, if these are your triggers, what are the impacts that are happening with you at your workplace when you've mentioned those triggers? So, it's your MOR moment of reflection. Take a take a little reflective attitude and mention the impacts they are happening on you. And I don't really want you to share this. This is for you to absorb and keep it with you. So while we have spoken a lot about, I hope you've taken your moment of reflection and understood about, what really are your causes and your triggers and your outcomes. We've heard a lot about anxiety being a main agent to us, causing more pain to us. But just wanted to ask this question: is anxiety really helpful? Do you think anxiety is helpful? Again, we can go back to our Mentimeters, and I just want to poll yes or no. Oh, that's a okay, a close watch. So yes, we have 28 responses saying yes, 32 responses saying no. And I'm reading the chat. Sometimes it's yes and no. Yes, sometimes, most time, no. Okay, so we have mixed responses. And before we move ahead, I have not been able to read all the chats, but what I'm hearing is a lot of discussions on medication. While, of course, as I said, remember right in our symptoms slide, that we are speaking today about everyday anxiety. When this anxiety is consistent over a period of time, such that it impacts your daily routine, that is the time you need to speak out, you need to reach out to counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists who will really help you in the medication and the overall therapy that is required. So today we will not be really addressing anything on the medication bit. Hope that clarifies. Yes, so coming back to whether anxiety is helpful, yes, no, and much more. Can we have the slide, please? So I like the answers which had yes and no. If we understand stress and use stress, yes, optimum level of anxiety or arousals are important. Why are they important? Now, they are important because it helps us to peak performance. It helps us to remain focused, motivated. No anxiety at all makes us very inactive, lame, not interested, distracted. And of course, excessive level of anxiety can cause burnouts, exhaustions. So an optimal level of anxiety is very helpful. It really has an impact on our overall performance, on our overall day-to-day living. Let's understand if it's an athlete who is going for a run, or it's somebody preparing for their examination. So that little butterflies are important to really give you that extra push to do it well. So this is what we mean by optimum levels of anxiety are really helpful. Now, this is the Yerkes-Dodson law, which the two very famous psychologists who suggested that there is a relationship between performance and anxiety, and optimum levels are really something that can be helpful. This was a food for thought for you to understand that what anxiety is that you need to embrace and which anxiety is that you need to be really careful and watchful about. Yeah. Now that we know that optimal levels of anxiety are helpful, how do we really maintain those optimal levels? It's simple, by not flipping our lid. What do I mean by that? Now, I came across this very inciting model by Dan Siegel. He's a psychiatrist and an author who describes what actually happens to our brain and how do we prevent flipping our lid. Now, as you see in the diagram, it's something, very simple that you could share with your children, to your elderly, to young adults. Everybody can really understand why and what of anxiety do we really need to work about and what's really happening inside us. Yeah. So let's pretend our hand is our brain. If I'm being clear.
Soonu, raise, yeah, that's right. That's fine.
That's okay. Thank you. So let's pretend your hand is a brain. Your wrist is your brain stem. Now, your brain stem is helping you with life functions like breathing, heart beating, sleeping. Let's place your thumb across the palm of your hand to make a number 4, pointing your fingers straight up. Now, what is your thumb? Your thumb is your downstairs brain. I'm not going to get into the more science of it, but it's easy for us to understand. So we are saying your thumb is your downstairs brain, and that is where emotions, memories, senses are stored. It is the feeling part of your brain. The 4 fingers are the upstairs brain. Now, these upstairs brain, they help us to think, reason, make choices, empathize with others, solve problems, and self-control. The thinking, this is the thinking part of our brain, and this is the feeling part of our brain, right? Now, what we are saying is all parts of our brain work and communicate together, but sometimes when we have an overwhelming feeling, our downstairs brain is triggered and we flip our lid. What is flipping our lid? Something that where we've lost control, we blow it up. Now, let's assume you want to react to the nasty mail sent by your coworker, and your downstairs brain is pushing, nudging, and wanting you to react. Come on, react, reply to the mail, you need to give it back, Boom, the lid has flipped. So what has happened? The connection between your upstairs brain and your downstairs brain has lost. So you've only operated from the reaction mode and not from the response mode. When your hand is a closed fist, that is when your upstairs brain and your downstairs brain are working in conjunction, and that is when you are most calm, in control, and regulated. When we flip our lid, the upstairs brain, which is nothing but our prefrontal cortex, is no longer in control, and thus we activate our fight, flight, and freeze reactions. So this one is responsible for your F3 reactions. That's why I thought it's very interesting for us to know and understand. And once we understand and regulate ourselves, it will be very beneficial if you can share this, with your kids, with your co-workers, with elderly. It's a very easy way to understand that what's happening right now. Am I only reacting from here? Can I take a moment, close my fit, think, empathize, and then respond? So when your brain is a fist, as I said, it relaxes you, it calms you, it's in control and regulates you. Now, how do we get our lid back? There are many coping mechanisms that are helpful to get our lid back, from journaling to singing, going for a run, going for a walk, getting ourselves oriented, speaking with our closed ones, hugging our favorite toys, and breathing and mindfulness. We heard a lot about breathing, mindfulness, and yes, they have a great correlation coefficient in managing anxiety. But what is it, the whole brouhaha about breathing and mindfulness? Nowadays, we hear everyone, practicing mindfulness. There are sessions, there are communities following it. But what's really happening inside, and why do we really need to do it? So let's take a moment here. We will count our number of breaths per minute as it's happening right now. Please do not alter your breathing technique right now. Whatever normal breaths that you are breathing, please just follow those. And you need to count one breath when you breathe in and breathe out. So that's one. So in a minute, how many breaths are you breathing is something that I would like to hear. So again, if you could go onto the Mentimeter and let's time ourselves for 1 minute. Your time starts now. So your time stops now. And okay, yeah, can I get the responses, please? 7 to 68. 100, 35, 15, 60. I'm reading the chats too. 24, 28. All right. So I'm assuming the ones that who have mentioned a higher number would have calculated breathing in 1 and breathing out as 2. As I said, breathing in and out has to be 1. So any idea what is the normal breath rate that a human being should have per minute? You've given me your disclosures. Any thoughts? You could put it in your chat box. Okay, 32 is what I read. 72. 11 to 12, 73, 18. All right. So let me disclose the normal breath rate is around 15 to 18 breaths per minute. But in deep breathing, this rate is reduced to about 4 to 8 breaths per minute. Now, this is what you need to reflect as to why the importance of breathing. Breathing itself centers our awareness, and hence our breaths become more deep, more in awareness, more in acquaintance, and hence very important to concentrate on breathing. What's really happening inside? Let the slide come up. Right. So as I shared the flip your lid model, see what's happening when you are breathing. See what's happening to your upstairs brain and your downstairs brain. As I said, downstairs brain is all into F3 mode by itself, if it's operating by itself. Now, when we are breathing mindfully, that is being aware of our breath and being, aware and in concentration of our breath, the oxygen is supplied to the red part of our of the skull that you can see. That is the upstairs brain. So there is a lot of oxygen induced to your upstairs brain. And what does the upstairs brain do? It helps you with empathy, insight, response flexibility, emotional regulations, body regulations, intuitions, being in control, attunement. Hence, breathing is imperative and breathing is important. So this is where you have your fist closed and you have your upstairs and downstairs brain working in conjunction, and how breathing plays an important part. And that's why centering between your eyebrows is where the most core part of the prefrontal cortex is, and hence again breathing becomes imperative. So this was important for me to share it with you, because we hear a lot about randomly if somebody is saying, oh, I'm tensed, I'm nervous, breathe, concentrate on your breath. But what is the why behind the breathing is what I wanted to share with you all. Yeah. Now,
Soonu, can I share something here
oh yes, of
on your
course, Geeta.
breathing? Okay, I just wanted to share a recent example on how this breathing is, can be controlled and what it happens. So very recently, my husband went for an MRI of the heart. It's called the CT angiogram. And the MRI scan requires that the pulse should be maintained between 50 to 60 per minute. Now, he had taken an anti-anxiety pill. He was told to take that before he takes the MRI to ensure that, there is a certain amount of calmness. So he was in a total state of relaxation, and his pulse was at 40, which was actually not going to work for the scan to happen. And he was seeing this on that screen, the oximeter. Now that was not okay. And you know what the technician telling him? Acha, aap na aankhein band karo aur gussa ho kisi par. Think of something that will make you angry, he kept saying. So I don't know what he did. He must have got angry at someone, probably it was me. And lo and behold, his pulse started climbing up, and when it reached the desired level, the technician, acha, bas, ab you, whatever thoughts you are with, ab you usko hold karo and you stabilize that pulse. So it was really like very amazing to see this actually playing out, and you can see that whole thing getting monitored, how much your emotions and your thoughts can, fluctuate your pulse and your breathing. So
completely. Thanks, Geeta. This is so relatable. So he activated his downstairs brain, right? When he had to think about being angry at somebody without having the upstairs brain in control. And that's how it shooted up. So thanks. It's such a relevant example to quote. Thank you, Geeta.
Yeah, thanks.
So while of course we spoke about breathing, and there are different techniques on breathing. There is a lot of varieties: double inhalation, double exhalation, your normal pranayams that we hear in yoga, your anulom viloms. Everything really helps to center yourself, and whatever breathing technique you are doing, it's going to help because it's going to supply oxygen to your upstairs brain. So one thing I missed telling you, what happens in your downstairs brain is when the downstairs brain is activated, the oxygen is supplied to your limbs, your muscles, because you want to be in the fight, flight, and freeze reaction. It's only that when you are aware and you are breathing and being mindful and having coping mechanisms, that the oxygen reaches your upstairs brain. So box breathing, this is again a very effective breathing technique because it directly impacts and de-escalates your body's responses to the F3 model. Now, what do we mean by box breathing? We have a cute GIF here which explains it, but let me just narrate it to you, and maybe you could do it along with me. What happens is initially you have to start with breathing in for 4 seconds. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds. Again, hold for 4 seconds. and repeat. So it's about breathing in, holding your breath, breathing out, holding your breath, and again breathing in. That's why it's known as the 4-box breathing technique, and it's very, very useful. It is experimented with a lot of medical labs, and there are a lot of positive results on breathing, calming your nerves, having calming effects on many other diseases that are caused due to stress and that are life threatening. So any breathing technique, as I said, you need to understand that why and what of it is going to really be helpful for us. In addition, what happens when you are paying attention to breathing, it causes most people to slow it down and to deepen it. The very fact that you are concentrating on breathing. Moving on to the next slide. Can we do box breathing while walking as well? Is that what I wondered? So I would say it's better to do it when you are at a calm place, you are seated, maybe on a chair, maybe down. That will be more beneficial, because when you are walking, there is your physical trouble to walk in terms of breathing will be impacted. So it's better that you sit in a calm place and then practice the 4-box breathing. All pranayams are best when you are breathing in a enclosed corner with yourself and not doing any other activity, whether it's mentally or physically. Of course, there are a lot of tidbits when you learn certain aspects of yoga. Vajrasana is very helpful in digesting, and many people ask me that, can I watch television and practice Vajrasana? Well, yes, some part of it will be helpful, but again, you are not tuned in. The moment you are tuned in, the oxygen reaches your upstairs brain. So remember that. Right. So now this is where we come. How do we accept to reset? Now, this is something that we've churned out. We understood that why is it important to first accept our emotions? It helps us to come to terms that, yes, this is happening to me. There's nothing to be shunned about. There's nothing to be feeling bad about it. We don't have to really avoid it. Give it a name, understand what it is, and accept it. Let's make friends with it, right? Now, why am I saying this is because, right diagnosis is half cure. Yeah, otherwise you are running around and not able to figure out what it is. Unfortunately, the way we are groomed, or certain parts of our culture really do not um, recognize mental health issues, and they are usually pushed under the carpet. It's like, hota hai, just go for a walk and you will feel fine, or let's go for a movie and you'll be fine. Well, sometimes it may really help, but as I said, if it's consistent and if it's really impacting you, you need to take a pause. You need to step back and understand. My favorite example is, like, if you've got a fracture, do we ever tell that, this is just in your mind, let's go for a jog and it will be fine? No. So when there is a mental health issue, it's there in the brain. There is some part that is fractured. How do we need to reset the bone? And that's how, when you reset the bone, you will be up on your feet again. So acceptance is very, very important. It helps us increase our psychological flexibility. What do I mean when I say psychological flexibility? It is the ability to stay in contact with the present moment, regardless of unpleasant thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. So it's nothing but acceptance makes you in charge, makes you in control, and helps you then further navigate. Of course, we've spoken about breathing. Mindfulness, very, very, very important. Very scientific direct derivation of why it is important, as I mentioned to you. So breathe, be aware of your breaths. See, we didn't even know, right now, that how many breaths do we have per minute. We had to really do it, something that we are just doing daily, every time. It's the most constant thing. It's your most constant companion, and we don't even know him. So it's important to understand that. Reset. What do we mean by reset? Now that you've accepted, now that you know the techniques of how do you really manage your anxieties, it's time to reflect. Reflect upon what were the triggers, what have been the impacts, how do I now use my techniques to resolve it. Regulate. How do I regulate my emotions? How do I use more of my upstairs brain to reason, to make proper decisions, to respond and not react? And as I rightly said right now, it's about responding, not reacting. We hear this a lot. It becomes a line that everybody really uses. But understanding the reasoning behind it, understanding the meaning now, hopefully we'll be able to respond better. Reflect and regulate are two most important ingredients to build your competency of resilience. Resilience is again a most popular word competency being used by leaders, used in organizations worldwide, by mental health practitioners, generally, casually also. So resilience is something, if you want an ingredient for, it's about reflecting and regulating, and automatically you derive at resilience. Now, as we've spoken about how we move our journeys from acceptance to resetting them, really there is nothing, one thing that really, has a solution to everything. You please can stir your own recipe. Whether it's breathing technique, as I said, whether it's journaling, doing yoga, focus on what you can control. Take baby steps when you feel overwhelmed. Connect with self and loved ones. Everybody has their own recipes. So when I shared my disclosure, yes, breathing really helped me. When I understood that it's my voice box which is choked, I tried to do techniques which really helped me open up my voice box, open up my closed blocks, and helped me embrace my anxieties. It's okay. I didn't want to. First part was avoiding them. I accepted them, used my breathing techniques to improvise on them. Geeta and Devika, I would like to call you in again. If you would like to share what did really help you to manage the anxieties that you shared. They were really candid shares that you had. Any one or two insights that really helped you in managing yours?
I think, Soonu, you've kind of covered the whole gamut of it. And I just wanted to say the threefold dimension of accepting, being mindful, and resetting are such important steps. To me, what happens is very often, the moment you accept, I have seen that when I jump into the reset without taking that second step of, just mindfully, getting back, because when one is prone to just getting into an action, things get even worse. So, Soonu, what you have shared, I think it's very important to go through those three steps, and that works for me, and this breathing thing, I mean, as simple as the moment you get, all of us do that, you just let a sigh out, and that sigh is actually a moment of pause, for us to kind of recalibrate. And for me, that has worked a lot. And I think nothing better than this whole breath thing of catching it, regulating it, and then responding on it. So that's how I have usually helps, even now, for instance, So the sigh always is the starting point of recalibrating.
Great. That's your body asking you to breathe. True. Thanks, Geeta, for sharing. Do we have Devika?
Devika, unfortunately, has had a very bad internet connection, so she has kind of dropped out. But what I have done, she's back. Good. Devika,
Devika, you're on mute.
Okay, so you'll have to probably try.
Sure. So while Devika shares, I usually follow people, who speak about anxieties and how do they really deal with it. And one interesting example that I would like to share with you all is about Virendra Sehwag. Of course, he has performance anxiety. And how do you think he's handling it on field? Let me share. So he has classifications. When he's scoring low runs, he tunes into bhajans. He's actually singing bhajans when he's taking runs between wickets. When runs are good, he likes to sing classicals. And if we remember his highest run score, which was around 320 runs, in the highest score that I think he's ever made. Please don't quote me on that. I think that's what I remember. He said that he sang "Chala Jata Hoon Kisi Ki Dhun Mein." And when he's very, very anxious, when he's actually suffering from performance anxiety, he sings "Kaise Bataye Kyun Tumko Chahe." So these are his own ways of dealing with his performance anxiety. So as I said, there is it's something that you need to stir up your own recipe, and how well classified his anxiety strategies were as per the situations demanded.
Thanks, Soonu. I have managed to unmute now. Thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah, Devika, please share.
So I want to share something that happened to me recently. As some of you know, I'm in my hometown in Coog with my parents, and I came because they needed some support. And frankly, the first couple of weeks was like, oh my God, there's so much to do. There's so much of other work I have to do, and that my parents were resisting support, so to speak. And I was talking to somebody who was asking me how things were, and I was like grumbling to him. And he said, where are you? And I said, I'm with my parents. And he said, you are so blessed. And it just stopped me in my tracks. Okay. And I realized that whatever I was grumbling about, I was really so blessed, and I should have actually been grateful to have had the opportunity to spend so much of time with my parents, right? So I realized that what happened to me then, later I realized, of course, not at that point in time, that this was a reframing that happened for me, right? Of a situation that was actually stressing me out quite a lot. But in the moment this person sort of turned the lens for me, and after that, I've been there a month after that, okay, and I'm every day counting my blessings that I'm having this time with my parents. So,
Devika, sorry, what did that person tell you? People have missed hearing you when you said that.
So when I was grumbling, the only thing he said was, "But you are so blessed to have this time with your parents." Right? Wow. So it just sort of turned the lens for me. And wow. Ever since that, I've been doing what I do with gratitude and with joy. So it just that one reframing has made such a difference to me. So I'm trying to see what else I can reframe now.
Just adding to what Devika said, sometimes when you grumble to some third person, you may just get a nugget which will reset your lens for you, which is also a good thing to unburden, sometimes.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's completely resetting what Devika mentioned, reframing and resetting. And as it didn't require some long number of hours to really get into reflections. I think that one statement really helped her reset. So as I said, it depends on how you're embracing your anxieties and stirring up your own recipes. And as we heard, it could be singing, it could be gratitude, it could be breathing. Steve Jobs was an avid practitioner of mindfulness and breathing, and since he was suffering from a life-threatening disorder, he had left a book on self-actualization for his co-workers and closed family members, because that's what helped him, and he thought that this is something that he should share as a parting gift. So when Devika spoke about gratitude, I remember Indra Nui speaking about gratitude being a very strong pillar for her to embrace and experience the benefits of gratitude. So she actually started this practice of writing gratitude letters to the parents of her co-workers, of her team members, and that really helped her increase her gratitude towards her parents and build in more confidence and networking for her co-workers. So everything really is about how you are storing your recipe. I am just taking a moment if I could answer any of these questions. Yeah, somebody said, can I eat something? Where's that? Can I eat my favorite food? Where did I? Yeah, Shweta. So, Shweta, you mentioned I have heard people eating their favorite food to deal with anxiety. What do you suggest on this? Well, I would say if you remember the freeze box, as long as you are just eating it once and not repeating it regularly, like it shouldn't be a getaway. It shouldn't be a mode where you want to fly away and, grab your food every time you're feeling anxious, because that results into disordered eating. So be mindful about that. Just having an ice cream when you're feeling low, I think that's perfect. So it's more about understanding whether the habit is becoming, a ritual, or it's just momentarily. So that should be fine. I'm managing anxiety by thinking about some other topic, like watching comedy show, taking pause, then restart. Yeah, see, very important, Amar, as you said, taking pause and then restart. So it shouldn't be that you're going into loop, shows that really drain you out, or increase your mental energy into something because you're escaping from something that you don't want to face. So as long as you're watching it, taking a pause and restarting might as well helps. Gratitude journal. Great. So I think I've addressed most of the questions that popped up, and leaving you with last thought, that go ahead and pass the baton. Now that you have realized how to embrace and reset, it's important to wear your oxygen mask first, right? We heard it in while flying. So it's very important to wear your oxygen mask before you try and, denote and point out anxieties and try to control them. So now that you've understood how to reflect, how to accept, how to reset, do share and pass the baton, show some kindness, show some compassion, understand these triggers happening around, understand and reflect if you are a trigger for somebody's anxiety, and how do you really make more meaningful conversations and have a more extended helping hand around. So I think we end our conversation on the topic for today. And as Devika had walked us through our sessions, please keep logged in. And more of our sessions are coming up on Accept and Reset, the queer experience. We have a roundtable with experts on topsy-turvy relationships, conversations with Rajiv Bajaj on importance of mental well-being. And we'll have some ambassador workshops too. So stay tuned. Please share your feedbacks on the links provided. And before you log off, it would be great to know what is your takeaway from today's session, in your chat boxes. Any one thing that really is a helpful takeaway for you, please type in the chat box. We would be really eager to understand what really helps. So thank you very much for being a good audience, listening, interacting, and I hope there is more acceptance. Devika, Geeta, any closing words? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Soonu. I think it's been a really useful session. I apologize for my lack of connectivity, and I was able to catch most of it. At least I was an audience for a lot, most of it at least. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think, some little things to understand is that all of us have anxiety in varying degrees. By recognizing it and by accepting that we do have these anxieties and not labeling it as something, as a weakness or something, I think that itself is a big step, right? Recognizing it will help us to manage it better. And all the techniques that Soonu has walked us through are all proven evidence-based techniques. So please do go and examine those a little better. Obviously, 1.5 hours is not enough to really train in any of these, but it's for you to know that there are these techniques and that they do work, and you just need to find your recipe and your favorite foods amongst these and what works for you. Yeah, thank you. Geeta?
Yeah, I think it's been very well captured. I think it's amazing that, Soonu, what you did in the 60 minutes, and taken us through the whole journey. So mindfully, meaningfully, and great takeaways. In fact, we have compiled a small handout, which I had posted earlier, and I'm going to just share it again. For all of the participants, it would be great if you can download it and keep it with you, because it summarizes everything that has been shared today. Yes, it's time that we accept, reset, and embrace. And it's an ongoing journey. There's never an end to it. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a great time. And there's been such great sharing, which the participants have been continuously doing with us. So looking forward to more conversations and having you all with us more often over the next couple of weeks. Over to you, Soonu.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your closing remarks, and thank you, wonderful audience, for being with us. Do leave in comments on your best takeaways from the session, and do drop in your feedback. It will be really helpful. Thank you. Have an anxiety-free night. Take care. Bye-bye.